Kristen, just name one thing that Tallahassee has ever done for us, the people. And so this was the only way. I spent a lot of time talking to Jose Oliva. I said, look, I know we disagree. Do this legislatively. It'd be better, easier, and I'd be okay with it. Not one hearing, not one witness. So they left me with no choice but to do it this way. The final thing I will say is I've heard a lot of arguments that, prices are going to go up and it's going to be, everything's going to be unaffordable. Listen, first of all, if my hamburger costs 50 cents more and a family of 4 gets to live with dignity, I'll pay 50 cents more for a hamburger. But let me tell you the real truth. If you go back to 1980, Walt Disney World, it cost $7.50 to go to Disney. Minimum wage was $3.25. 30 years later, with no raise in the minimum wage to speak of, a ticket at Disney is now $125 or $150 during Christmas, and the minimum wage in Florida is $8.56 an hour. People who work in these theme parks are living in their cars and showering at work. It is subhuman. It's not fair. Meanwhile, the chairman of Disney, who did not start the company, is a billionaire. There's something wrong when that's the system. We did it in a slow way. The first year, the raises to $10, then 11, then 12, then 13, then 14, and then finally 15, 6 years from now. I was very sensitive to the small business owners and restaurateurs who need to be prepared to get ready, to get their business ready for this change. And it won't be hard. So last night, I was nervous because 60% is a landslide in any election, as you all know. And we barely got to 60%, but we got it. Nobody ever asked what the score was in a championship game. They just want to know who won and who lost. And last night, the working poor in Florida won in a very, very big and forever way. And not only did they win, but their children won. And forever and ever, this raise will be here tied to COLA. And maybe still not enough, but at least enough to give people dignity. And so that's why I did it. That's who I did it for. I can make a couple of promises today. I never see a situation where I run for any political office in Florida. I'm just as happy with Ron DeSantis doing his good job up in Tallahassee. I never see myself doing another amendment. They've made it really difficult to do amendments in Florida, making it probably triple what I spent on this to do a new amendment. So the good news for Florida and the better news for the legislators and the special interest and the Chamber of Commerce in Tallahassee is John Morgan's done. But I'm very grateful. I spent a lot of time working on this. I'm not an overly religious person, but I did spend a lot of time praying for this to happen because the suffering that I see, that I know, that happens right here in communities all over Florida was horrible. And last night, the people of Florida showed their good hearts and their compassion. And now we will have a somewhat living wage for all these hardworking families. And so with that, I'm going to take a slug of water. And if anybody has questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Great. We have Mike Cyan. I'm going to unmute you now. Give me 1 second. Go ahead, Mike.
Okay, thank you so much. Appreciate that. What message do you have, Mr. Morgan, for teenagers?
For teenagers?
Yeah, they may or may not be able to get as many jobs as they possibly could have before.
I don't believe that to be true. I've got teenagers working at Morgan & Morgan. I raised my minimum wage to $15 an hour, and I have teenagers working there, and that's fine. And the other message I would have to the people who are listening to that question, lots of these teenagers are also contributing to their homes. I know this, when I was a young boy, when I made money working on my paper route or wherever, my money came home and went back into our house because it had to. And so what I would say to these teenagers is, you're going to be fine. We're still going to need to hire you because we still need people. And if you need to help contribute to your family, you're going to be able to do that as well.
Great. Next, Nadine, you have a question. Please say your name and the outlet you're from.
Hey there, I'm Nadine with News 6. Hey, John, we actually spoke to an economic professor today who said going into this year, he felt like this was a bad idea for the entire state of Florida, but definitely now in the middle of a pandemic, he called this economic malpractice right now. He feels like, as an unbiased professor who focuses on the economy, many of these furloughed employees won't be hired back, or if they are, their hours will be reduced. Even if it's incremental, he says that this could be devastating for our economy in the state.
Well, the reason he's an economic professor is because he doesn't know how to get out in the real world and really make it. I have very little use for economic professors or economists. You know what an expert is? It's just a regular guy from out of town. But what I would tell them is this pandemic, you can't blame or try to hold back progress because of the pandemic. It'd be like saying we couldn't go forward after 9/11 or go forward after the Great Recession. And by the way, this pandemic, this thing doesn't happen until next year, a year from now. And so if we're going to start using the pandemic as an excuse in 6 years to get to $15 an hour, it's an excuse. There are true objections that I see, and then there's excuses. And this professor is making an excuse by using the pandemic, where 6 years down the road, the minimum wage goes to $15 an hour. I would just tell this professor, why don't you try to live on $8.56 an hour, and then you come back and tell me how your life's going. I don't have much use for economic professors who've never met a payroll, who've never really got out and done what small business owners do. They live in an ivory tower with theories, but they've never done anything. And most of them are just paid experts for the Florida Chamber or whoever wants to get their propaganda out. Not much use for economic professors in my book.
Okay, next we'll take a question from Pete. Pete, you should be muted now.
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can.
Oh, hello, John. My name is Pete Reinwald. I'm a digital reporter for Spectrum News 13 and Bay News 9. Two questions, please. I wonder if you could share how much time in terms of months and how much money you've put into this measure. And also, could you speak, and you address this, so could you elaborate on the passage of Amendment 2 in the context of a livable wage? Thank you.
Well, what I would say is I've spent around $6 million of my own money. $6 million of my own money. I've had help from a few groups, and I've spent an inordinate amount of time on it. We had to write the language. We had to get the signatures. We had to go to the Supreme Court to approve the language. And we had to continue to gather signatures to get to the requisite number. And then we had to go out and fight like hell, because the people who are against us, the governor, the Speaker of the House, President of the Senate, the Chamber of Commerce, the restaurant and hospitality industry. So I feel like David versus Goliath in my battle here for this amendment. But all of the money and all of the time was well worth it last night. Now, what I'll speak to about what this does for people is it is life changing. Some of us don't understand or are too far removed from what it would be like to live on $8.57 an hour. You can't. Most people don't, or many people don't. They just rather get government subsidy. The taxpayers pay it. Tell that economist to figure that in about how much we spend in food stamps and child care and just money, welfare, that would not have to happen. And finally, once this happens and once it kicks in, there's a cycle that's broken and there's a hope that's given to these families. I will say one more thing to this economist who's sitting over there in that tweed jacket and pipe, whatever college he's sitting in pontificating, when he says that people are going to lose jobs. That is BS, and I'll tell you why. One of the arguments throughout this whole thing is, we're going to lay people off. We're going to have to lay people off. That is a lie. That's a flat out lie. I'll tell you why. Do you think the owner of the restaurant's going to wash the dishes? Do you think the owner's going to bust the tables? Do you think the owner's going to cook the food? Do you think the owner's going to mop the floors or mow the grass? No way. That's a scare tactic that's not going to work. What they're going to do is they're going to be thanking me, because what they're going to have 2-3 years down the road is less turnover, happier employees, better morale, better productivity, and a retention of their workforce. When I lose people, that's the worst thing that can happen to my business, is to lose a person who's a good worker, a good friend, and it goes on. And after all the training we've done. So once they get into this, they're going to be telling me, you know what, John, you were right.
Thank you, John.
Thank you.
Next, we have Ashley. Please give us your name and your outlet.
My name is Ashley, and I'm with Channel 9. John, I heard you mention the medical marijuana amendment. The legislator made some changes to that and made it, as you mentioned, difficult to get it through. Are you anticipating the legislator doing the same with Amendment 2?
I don't know. I mean, I will just tell you this, that I think the world of Wilton Simpson, who's the president of the Senate. Had a big fundraiser for him this year at my house. I think the world of Chris Sprouse. And I have a lot of respect for the governor. I don't know what they're going to do. I know that in amendments past, they've tried to undo whether it's the felons' rights or medical marijuana. I don't know what they're going to do or what they're going to try. I hope not. I'm lucky that I'm friendly with them so we can have a conversation. But if they try to undermine the will of the people, I'll do what I did last time and I'll sue the state and I'll win. This language is very unambiguous. It's $10, $11, $12, $13, $14, $15. It's that simple. I don't know what they would do, but I do know this. I do know that rich people don't like to have the people have a say in government, and they will try anything and everything to undermine and benefit themselves. So I don't know what it would be, but the good news is we have a law firm, we have lots of lawyers, and I would love to take this in front of a jury if they try to undermine the will of the people, like they were trying to do with medical marijuana. To Governor DeSantis's credit, he said to me when he dropped the lawsuit, he goes, "Look, I read your language, I read the bill, I read the intent language, and it's unambiguous." And I salute him for that, and am very grateful to him for that.
Thank you.
Thanks. Next, we'll take Josh. Just a reminder, please tell us your name and your outlet.
Hey, my name is Josh. I'm with Fox 13 in Tampa. You've answered a lot of my questions related to Amendment 2. So I just wanted to ask, several states have passed legalizing marijuana for recreational use. I know you were big in for medical marijuana. I just want to see what your thoughts were on, will Florida ever legalize? How long do you want to see that happen?
I'd like to see it happen yesterday. It is the most ridiculous law in all the books in all the states. I mean, marijuana has never killed anybody. People wake up the next day, they're not hungover. Jobs don't lose productivity. And yet, on the other hand, prescription drugs kill the number one killer of people 50 and under, just wreaks havoc on our families with drug addiction. And so I'm a big proponent of legalizing marijuana. What I would say to that know-it-all professor that's so worried about the pandemic, if you're worried about the pandemic and the effect that it's going to have on the state of Florida, legalize recreational marijuana because it's a job creator, it's a tax creator, it boosts real estate, it boosts agriculture. It is a true 21st century business. And the time has come for the United States of America, not just Florida, to legalize marijuana and just be done with it. We all know that one day marijuana will be legal in America. We know that. Every one of you know that. So if it's going to happen tomorrow, why not do it today?
Right, next we have Patricia. Again, just remind us of your outlet.
Hey, John, it's Patty Mazzei at the New York Times. Thanks for doing this.
Well,
I'm wondering, big picture, what your takeaway is from the presidential results this year, coming on the heels of the results in 2018. I mean, you've had luck winning elections, but your party has not so much.
Well-
So how are you going to be describing the state in the future to other people? Is this going to scare away donors? What does the Democratic Party need to do in Florida moving forward?
Well, my takeaway, first of all, is that Nate Silver may need to look for a new job. You know, Nate Silver is sure wrong, and so are pollsters. If anybody's going to be worried about finding a new job, I think it's got to be pollsters. I am a registered NPA. I decided long ago that the Democratic Party was moving a little bit too far left for me, and I couldn't be with the Republican far right. I'm kind of stuck in the middle. And so in Florida, for example, I'm a huge Joe Biden donor, bundler, whatever you want to call it. I've known him forever. He's one of the kindest, nicest people I've ever met, and has been incredibly kind to my children and my family. But what I would say is Florida is we are still in the South. We are still in the South. And Florida is still a tough nut to crack. The election last night was predictable in my mind. We have in the South Florida, we have Cubans and Venezuelans who have a very, very vitriolic reaction to socialism, just the word socialism. Many of these people left Cuba on a raft. And so what I would say to this, the donors are always going to be here. It's just like California. The donors are always going to be there. They're always going to be in Texas. They're always going to be in New York. One thing we found out about the election yesterday on both sides is money was not a problem. I bet there's a bunch were left with lots of money and crazy money. I mean, I was watching the race in South Carolina, Jamie Harrison getting all this money, like 57 million or something. I'm like, he doesn't have a snowball's chance in hell. And they were throwing money at him. I mean, irrational exuberance really happens. You know what happened? Why? Pollsters take their data, they go to donors with bogus information, bogus polls, and then fundraisers sell off of that polling. So Florida is a very conservative state. We don't seem like we're in the South, but we are in the South. We have 3 segments of Florida: the Panhandle, Central Florida, and South Florida. And they're like 3 different worlds with 3 different sets of people. But I'll tell you what, it's the best state. I'd rather be here than anywhere else in the country.
Great. Next, we'll have Carolyn. Just remind us again of your outlet. Thank you.
Hi, John. This is Caroline Glenn over at the Orlando Sentinel. Sort of
Hello.
piggybacking off of that last question, I was wondering what you made of Amendment 2 going with about 61% of the vote, but then Florida going to Trump. Yeah, there's been comments from, for example, Representative Anna Eskamani, mentioning that there were several Democrats who actually seemed to sort of distance themselves from this amendment, even though it seems to sort of be a central tenet to the Democratic Party. For example, Nikki Fried. What did you sort of think of the support that this got across the party? Were you disappointed in that?
Well, the Florida Democratic Party is a joke. There is no apparatus. I mean, Joe Gruters and the Republican Party run circles around the Florida Democratic Party. Now Nikki Fried is somebody that I supported in a very big way and was friends with. And a few weeks ago, I read an article where she's on the fence. These are the words. She was on the fence about the minimum wage. If you're a Democrat in America and you're on the fence about a living wage, you need to join the other party. Now, what I understand is, she's very beholden to sugar, and Big Sugar was against this, and that's why she's remained against us. At the very last minute, she had a very weak, tepid response about, I support, I'm for it. That bullshit, that doesn't work with me. To me, Nikki Fried has disqualified herself from any future with statewide office in the Democratic Party. And I'm sorry to say that because I really thought she had a bright future. She can go work for sugar.
Just one more question we have from Clay. Please remind us of your outlet.
Hi, John. This is Clay Lepard from News 6. What have you noticed in other states when it comes to raising the minimum wage?
What have I learned in other states?
What have you learned from other states that have worked to raise the minimum wage?
That it works. That it works, and there's workers who are worried that, hey, I've been here for 10 years and all I'm making is $15 an hour, and why is this going to happen? What I say to those people, because this happens in other states, is rising tides lift all boats. And look, we know one thing. What we're doing right now isn't working. We know that the unrest, and the reason it passed with 60% is there are Trump voters who are also poor people who live in poverty, who work all day long and fall further behind. We know that 40% of America does not have $400 in the bank, a minimum of $400. Some don't have $100. What do you do when your transmission goes out? What do you do when your air conditioner goes out? What do you do when there's a home repair? And so we know that that what we're doing is not working. And what we have to do as a country is we have to do the most for the most with the least. One time I asked my wife, I said, let me ask you a question. If we were asked to give all our money away, but in doing so, everybody in the entire world could have a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house with a white picket fence and a barbecue grill on the back. And we just be one of them. We just be one of the 7 billion or how many ever there are. I said, Ultima, would you do that? Would you make that swap? And she paused for a second and she said, well, let me ask you a question. I go, what? She said, would the houses have air conditioning? Okay. Said, all right. Yes, the houses would have air conditioning. And she said, yes, I would do it. And at some point in time, we all have to think what we should do and what we will do for those who are less fortunate. And if you ask yourself that question, first of all, we have more than we need. And the people who don't have anything. And so when you look around, you have to ask yourself the question, why are the rich getting richer? Why is the stock market going through the roof? And why are people living in their cars, living in hotel rooms, living in boxes? You go to the shelters all throughout Florida, there's children going to school from homeless shelters, and it's getting worse and worse and worse. The rich are getting richer, the poor are getting poor, and at some point, like I said in the beginning, the poor rise up. They don't ask for it. They don't ask for John Morgan's amendment. They just come into the castle and they take it because they love their children and they're sick of watching their children go hungry. 1 out of 6 children in Florida, go to bed hungry at night. Hungry. To me, it's subhuman. And that's why I said this is not a political issue. This is a moral issue. This wasn't a political matter last night. This was a moral matter. Everything we learn in church and synagogue and temple and mosque tells us to go out and feed the hungry and clothe the naked and house the homeless. And Florida did that last night to some degree.
Great. We have one more question from Caroline.
Yeah, just one other question, John. You mentioned that this would be, the last amendment like this that you would spearhead, and that you don't see yourself running for an elected office in Florida. Can you just tell us a little bit about this kind of being the last hurrah in that sense? What it kind of feels like for this to be the bookend, and to what extent going forward do you see yourself being politically involved at all? Will it just be as a donor? What do you see in the future for yourself in that arena?
Well, it feels good to know that you've won twice 2 big things that you cared about. I'm 64 years old. I'll be 65 in March. I live half of the year now in Maui. I like it out there. With technology, you can almost be anywhere and run your businesses. And so what I kind of plan on doing for the final chapters is I will be involved in politics. I don't think I'll ever be involved like I've been with donors. I mean, Joe Biden came along and I'd sworn off of it, but I'd known him so long that I couldn't resist to say no to him. And I think what I'll do is, instead of doing the things I've done politically, I'll continue to do the other things that I've done with, whether it's the Second Harvest Food Bank or the John and Ultima Morgan house at Harbor House or Mustard Seed or whatever, Boys and Girls Club. I think what I'll do is we have spent a lot of time on our estate and when we're gone, and we've built a foundation that we think could be substantial, and that my 4 children will run when I'm dead. And they know that the things that are important to me is food, water, medicine, shelter, and dignity, and that my children will take that foundation and try to do what me and their mother would want done. So it's weird getting old, but it's also almost like you finished the race and you won. So mixed bag.
Great. That was the last question.
All right. Well, thank you all. Well, let's go see what happens with Joe Biden and Donald Trump.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to turn mine off.